Hi guys, welcome back. This is Professor Hank, and in this video we are going to talk about nested loops in Python. So we'll begin by giving you an overview, and then we'll look at a little bit of logic, and then we'll write a sample program or two. Okay, so let's begin. Now, great thing about this is it's really simple. When you talk about nested loops, all you're doing is talking about a loop inside of a loop. That's it, right? So for each repetition of the outer loop, you have all of the repetitions of the inner loop. Okay, that's it. So the outer loop's body, let me put it another way, the outer loop's body, you have a loop, its body itself has a loop inside of it. Fine. Okay, so here's a little factoid for you here to throw in there. If you want to know the total number of repetitions you're going to end up having for your inner loop, it's going to be the total number of repetitions of your outer loop times the total number of repetitions of your inner loop. That's going to give you the total repetitions altogether. So let's say that the loop which contains another loop, that outer loop, repeats 10 times. And then let's say that that inner loop, the loop that's contained inside of the outer loop, repeats 5 times. Well, how many total repetitions are you going to have? 50. 5 times 10. That's it. Okay, so let's look at a logic example here using flowcharting, right? So we'll draw out a plan for a program that's going to use nested loops, and then we'll write the program. So let's say that I wanted to print out a field of stars, okay? So let's say that I wanted to print out something that looked maybe like this, okay? Using nested loops, okay? So if I was gonna do that, okay, here's what I could do. Now, when you design or when you work with loops, it's very useful, I think, to design loops from the inside out, right? Because what's a loop? It's repetition structure. So you can start off with that thing that you want to have happen, that you want to have repeat. So in this case, printing a star, right? Okay, we want that to happen over and over and over and over again, okay? Now, if we take a look at this field of stars, we can break this down into smaller pieces, right? So what you have are rows of stars, and then for each row, you've got a column of stars, right? So let's think about it this way, right? Let's print a row of stars, but then repeat doing that. Okay, so how would we print out 3 stars, right? Well, if we're going to print a star, then what we need to do is we have to, so long as there's a counter, we'll use a counter. So long as there's more stars to print, keep printing them, right? So how about this? If we have a counter variable that keeps track of all that, we could, call it I. So long as I is greater than 0. If that's true, then we'll go ahead and print our star. Okay, and if we're going to print that star, then our counter would have to go down by 1, right? So we'd have to decrement that I, okay, by 1. Okay, and then we'd have to go back up and test to see if we have anything left in our counter, right? See if there's any numbers, anything greater than 0 still in our counter. So long as I is greater than 0, we'll keep printing stars. Okay, but as soon as it's not, right? So as soon as it's not, then what do? Well, that row is finished. And so then we have to move to the next row. Well, how can we move to the next row? Well, we can move to the next row by printing a new line character in Python, right? So if I is not greater than 0, then it's time to move to the next row. Right? So how are we going to do that? Well, we'll print a new line character. Right? We'll move the cursor to the next line. So we'll print a new line. Okay. Now, we have to start our counter I off somewhere. Right? Now we want 3 stars in this example. So we'll start off with I equal to 0. Okay? So now we've got some logic here. So, or not 0, sorry. 3, because we're counting down, right? So we want 3 stars, we're counting down. So start off at I equals 3. Is I greater than 0? If that's true, print the star. Decrement I by 1. Right, go back up, check. If we decrement I by 1, I will become 2. Is 2 greater than 0? Yep, print the star. I goes down by 1. Is 1 greater than 0? Yep, print the star. I goes down by 1. Is 0 greater than 0? False. Print a new line character, which will move the cursor to the next line. Okay, so we need to do that 3 more times, or a total of 4 times, because we wanted to print out this field of stars that's 4 by 3, right? 4 rows by 3 columns. Okay, so this right here, this whole logic right here, this is going to form the inside of another loop. We want to repeat this whole thing that we just did 4 times. Okay, so let's have another counter, right, which we'll call J. And so long as J is greater than 0, if that's true, then we'll go ahead and do all of this, right? We'll do all of this stuff. And then what do we do after we print out one row and we move the cursor to the next row? Then J should go down by 1 because we've completed the inner loop, all the stuff we want to repeat 1 time. Right? So we'll say J minus equals 1. Okay, and then we'll go back up and we'll do our test on J again, right? But as soon as J is equal to 0, well, then it's over. We're done. We've finished printing out our field of stars, right? So let's initialize the J counter to 4, and that's going to start everything off, right? That's the whole beginning. Okay, so let's trace through it really quick. We won't go through the entire thing because that would take too long. That would take a while, right? So we start right here. Let's go through the logic. So we start the program. We start what we're going to do, right? So we get a variable called J. We've assigned it 4, and then this is beginning the outer loop, right? So is 4 greater than 0? Yes. So then we enter into the body of the loop, and I gets created and assigned 3, and now we're going to begin the inner loop. Is I greater than 0? Yes. So then we print our star, and then we decrement I by 1, and then we go back up. Here's the loop part, the inner loop. Okay, is I greater than 0? Yes. So enter the body of the loop, that inner loop, print the star, subtract 1 from I, go back up to the top of the loop. Is I greater than 0? Yep, because 1's greater than 0, enter the body of the loop, print a star, subtract 1 from I, go to the top of the loop. Is I greater than 0? No, 0 is not greater than 0, so it's false. We break out, we print a new line character, so now we've moved to the next line, the beginning of the next line, subtract 1 from J because we've got 1 fewer row left to print. We've already printed 1. So then we go back up to the top of the outer loop. Is J greater than 0? Yep. Oops, this should say 3, sorry. Yep, because 3 is greater than 0, because remember when it was 4, we're supposed to subtract 1, not 3, right? So that's why I miswrote 1 in there, right? It should be 3. Is 3 greater than 0? Yes. So since that's true, we go back in, and now we're going to start the inner loop again, right? So we're having another repetition of the outer loop, which we'll call the J loop, and that repetition includes setting up I again, and then running through the 3 repetitions of the inner loop. Now we've seen, I showed you that already, so I'll just go ahead and write it out, right? Because this is going to go to 3, then 2, then 1, then 0, and then we're going to print the new line. J is then going to go down, And then we're going to start another repetition of the outer loop because 2 is greater than 0. And so then that outer loop, the body of that outer loop is going to do its thing. Right, just like we had before. J goes down by 1. Is J greater than 0? Yep. So that's the outer loop there. J is the outer loop. So then its body begins, sets I back up to 3, does its thing. The inner loop then does its thing through its 3 repetitions. Okay, 1, 2, 3. It finishes. Then J gets set to J minus 1. So then we go to the top of the outer loop. Is J greater than 0? Nope. So false and over. Right? So hopefully you can kind of see the logic there. All right, so let's write a program that implements our plan that we just worked out through the flowchart, right? So program's going to start, and then what do we have to do? What's the first thing that happens? We create the counter variable, right? That's for our outer loop, okay? And then what? Well, now we've got our test expression, J greater than 0, okay? Now, this is a loop, so while J greater than 0, right? So this begins the outer loop, okay? Now, once you've entered the body of the outer loop, once we get past this test, what do? Well, then we have to set I equal to 3, and then what? We have our test expression, I greater than 0, and that's the test expression for the inner loop. It's a loop, right? It's not an if, it's a loop. You can see following the arrows on the flowchart, right? So what's the body of that inner loop? Well, the first thing that we do there is we print a star, right? Now, don't want to print a star and then move to the next line. We only want to move to the next line after the row is done. So let's turn end off, okay? Make sure that each star gets printed on the same line. Now once we've printed that star, we have to subtract 1 from our counter. Okay, so this right here begins the inner loop. Okay, and this right here ends the inner loop. Okay, all right. I want to line these up because it just looks better, so I'm going to do that. Okay, and I equals 3 is the counter for the inner loop. Okay, now, once the inner loop's finished, right, remember we were looking at this right here, okay, this part right here. I'll even put it in green, right? Green is the inner loop. Okay, now once the inner loop's finished running, what do we have to do? Move the cursor to the next line. So that means that once the inner loop is finished, right? So you're not putting a print statement here. That would still be part of the inner loop. We're putting it here, right? Because remember, this is all part of the body of the outer loop. Okay, so do that, and then we have to decrement the counter for the outer loop. And that line right there ends the outer loop. Okay, so let's try it and see what happens, see what we get. Okay, so there's our output. Thank you, Python shell. And we see that we've got our 4 rows with 3 stars in each. Let's see another example. Let's say that we were going to calculate the average for average sales across 4 quarters for a particular company, and we want to find that average across 3 divisions of that company. So basically what that means is that for each of the 3 divisions, we have to find out the average of their 4 quarters. Okay, So let's do that. Okay, let's try to figure this out. Now, design your loops from the inside out. If we wanted to find the average of the sales for across 4 quarters for one division, what would we do? Okay, so what we would start off with, if I wanted to just ask you what the total for 4 numbers was, what would I do? All right, let me reset this. Well, I would need my accumulator variable. It's like keeping a running total, right? I would need that. Okay. And then what would I need to do? Right? Well, I know that I'm only going to ask you for 4 numbers. Right? So I need a counter for that. Right? Then, so long as that counter is greater than 0, then what am I going to do? Well, I have to ask you, let's see here, I have to ask for the number, right? Then what do I have to do? I have to add it to the total, right? That number. And then, since I got the first number, I only have 3 numbers left, right? So then I have to decrement my loop counter. Okay? And then we go back. Here's the loop part, right? Go back and we check again. Now, as soon as there's no more numbers left for me to get from you, right? That would mean that I is not greater than 0 anymore because there's 0 left. So then I'd have to figure out what the average is. Well, what's the average? The average would be the total of all the numbers I've asked you about, right? And I would have to divide that by 4, right? Because 4 numbers. Okay, and then once I've done that, I can tell you the total, right? Or the average, excuse me. Tell you the average. Okay, so that would be the logic for me finding the average of 4 numbers. Okay, asking you for the average of 4 numbers. Now, all I want to do is repeat that 3 more times because we got 3 divisions, right? So I'm going to do a similar thing. All right, so let's see here. So I need to repeat this 3 times, so I'm going to need an outer loop. So I'll need a counter, right, to keep track. And then, so long as that counter is greater than 0, I'm going to do all this stuff just like I said, right? Okay. And then, right, this is making up, this is everything in green here is what we started with. So everything in green, we want to repeat 3 times. So everything in green is going to give me the average sales for one division across 4 quarters. Okay, but then I want to do that for 3 different divisions. So there's where my outer loop comes in, right? Now, once I've gone through all of those divisions, well, I'm done, right? There's no more averages to tell you about. So we're ending our program basically, okay? So there is our logic for finding the average of the sales for 4 quarters, and do that for three times. Repeat that 3 times. So let's write a program that implements that logic, right? So the outer loop's counter, right, is J. I'm using the same variable name here. Outer loop counter. Okay, and then while j is greater than 0, right, this starts the outer loop. What do? Oh, I did forget one little piece. I did forget one little piece, didn't I? Now that I'm looking at this, let's fix it. Okay, let's fix our defect here. Right? We got to decrement our j. I got an infinite loop in here, don't I? Right? There's nothing to cause j to decrement by 1. So let's fix that right now. Okay. We'll just put that step in. Before I even wrote a line of code, I found a bug, right? So j minus equals 1. So that should fix that. So no more infinite loop. All right, anyway, so let's get back to this. So that starts our outer loop. Now remember what we were doing for the inner loop, or for the body of that outer loop, right? That's got the inner loop that we want. Well, we set total equal to 0, right? This is serving as an accumulator. Okay, and then what? Here's our counter for the inner loop. Okay, and then what? We have our test expression, I greater than 0, right? So while I greater than 0. And this is starting the inner loop. Right? Now, what did we do? The inner loop, we had to ask for a number. Since this is money, it's sales, right? I think that was the narrative that I gave. We'll convert whatever they give us into a float. Okay? And then what do? Add that number to our total. Right? Then what do? We subtract 1 from our inner loop's counter. Minus equals 1. Right? So that is the end of the inner loop. Right? Now once we're done with that inner loop, go back and look at our flowchart here. Once I greater than 0 is false, what do? Figure the average. Right? So average is equal to total divided by 4. Right? Then what do? We tell you what the average is. The average is average. Then what do? The part that I forgot, right? Decrementing j. Okay, and that is the end of the inner loop. Okay, so let's try it. All right, so we're entering sales, right, for the right here. This is the line. So we've started the first repetition of the outer loop, and now we've begun the first repetition of the inner loop. Okay, so we're entering the sales for that first division, for that first quarter. So I don't know, $817.23. Okay, we see enter sales again. Why? Because we did all of this, right? This is the body of the inner loop, and that's all the code that it ran for its first repetition. So we went back up to the top of that while loop, that inner loop. And so we're seeing the first statement again. So this time we'll have $634.13. Well, remember the counter was initialized to 4, so we're in our third repetition now of the inner loop. So now we'll say $797.66. Well, we got another one. Right, we've got another one. We got another repetition because that counter's not 0 yet. So $273.40. Now we see the average, right? Why? Because once we finished that fourth repetition, the inner loop was done, then we moved on, calculated the average, showed it to you. Then the outer loop's counter decremented by 1. Went to the top of the outer loop, started the whole process over again. Now with enter sales, we're at the top, or at the beginning, I should say, of the body of the inner loop. So we're going to do the same thing again. Right, it's going to repeat. And I'll just type this in just to speed things up a bit. Okay, so there is the end of the second repetition of the outer loop. Now we're beginning the third repetition of the outer loop. Okay, so the inner loop's going to repeat 4 times. Right, then we're we're going to see the average, and then it's over, right? So how many times did we see the average? 3 times, right? Because the outer loop repeated 3 times. How many times did we see enter sales? 4 times. Why? Because the 4 times 3, actually 12, right? Why? Because the inner loop repeated 4 times. So 4 repetitions of the inner loop times 3 repetitions of the outer loop means we had 12 total repetitions. Okay, so that's going to bring this video to a close. If you felt that the video was useful, please consider giving the video a thumbs up, and if you thought that the video sucked, well, then you've got that thumbs down button as an option as well. If you'd like to see more videos, if you're interested in more content from the channel, feel free to hit that subscribe button. And as usual, if you're a student of mine and you have further questions, feel free to drop me an email or to stop by my office hours. Okay, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.